Katherine Short, the 42-year-old daughter of beloved actor and comedian Martin Short, was found dead at her Hollywood Hills home on Monday evening, February 23, 2026. The Los Angeles Fire Department responded to the residence at approximately 6 in the evening, and paramedics pronounced her dead shortly after their arrival. A law enforcement source confirmed to the Los Angeles Times that her death appeared to be the result of suicide. The Short family released a statement through a representative saying, "It is with profound grief that we confirm the passing of Katherine Hartley Short. The Short family is devastated by this loss and asks for privacy at this time. Katherine was beloved by all and will be remembered for the light and joy she brought into the world." With those words, a family already familiar with deep loss now faces what may be the most devastating chapter of all. But who exactly was Katherine Short, and what kind of life had she built for herself away from the spotlight her father has occupied for decades? Katherine Hartley Short was, by most accounts, someone who had deliberately chosen a life of service over celebrity. She earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and gender sexuality studies from New York University in 2006, then went on to complete a master's degree in social work from the University of Southern California in 2010. Those credentials put her on a path into the mental health profession, and she followed that path with evident commitment. She maintained a private practice as a licensed clinical social worker in Los Angeles and also worked part-time at Ame Health, a psychiatry-led outpatient clinic where she focused on community outreach, peer support, and psychotherapy. By all professional measures, she had built a meaningful career helping others navigate the very kinds of struggles that often go unseen and unspoken. And yet, even with that background and that expertise, her family now confronts a loss of this magnitude. That contrast between her life's work and her final days raises questions that her loved ones and the broader public may wrestle with for some time. What does it say about the weight that mental health professionals themselves carry? It is a question worth pausing on. Mental health workers, therapists, social workers, and counselors are among the most at-risk professionals when it comes to occupational stress, compassion fatigue, and the quiet accumulation of other people's pain. They are trained to hold space for suffering, to sit with crisis, and to guide others towards stability. But that work takes a toll that is rarely acknowledged publicly. Katherine Short understood this better than most. She was also involved with Bring Change to Mind, a nonprofit organization whose mission centers on empowering young people to have open conversations about mental health and dismantling the stigma that so often keeps people from seeking help. In other words, she spent her professional life fighting for exactly the kind of openness and support that might, for so many others, make the difference between despair and survival. Her involvement in that work speaks to a genuine sense of purpose and to a person who cared deeply about the world she was trying to improve. Katherine was the eldest of 3 children adopted by Martin Short and his wife, actress Nancy Dolman. The couple first met in 1972 when they were both cast in a Toronto production of the rock musical Godspell, and they married in 1980. Over the years, they welcomed Katherine and her 2 younger brothers, Henry and Oliver, into their family. By most accounts, theirs was a household shaped by warmth, humor, and deep affection. Katherine occasionally appeared at public events and walked red carpets alongside her father, but she was never someone who sought fame or public attention. She chose the quieter, more grounded work of helping people in a clinical setting. So what shadow had already fallen over this family long before Monday's news arrived? That shadow came in 2010 when Nancy Dolman died of ovarian cancer at the age of 58. Martin Short has spoken about that loss with the kind of honest grief that resonated with many who heard it. In a 2012 interview with The Guardian, he said, "This is the thing of life that we live in denial about, that it will ever happen to us or our loved ones, and when it does, you gain a little and you suffer a little. There's no big surprise." 2 years later, in 2014, he published his memoir titled I Must Say, My Life as a Humble Comedy Legend, and he dedicated the book to his children. Katherine was 26 when her mother died, old enough to understand the finality of it and young enough for it to reshape the years that followed. Grief at that age, for a loss of that size, does not simply resolve, it moves with a person. And now her father and brothers face a second devastating loss that, in some ways, defies easy words. Martin Short is currently in the middle of a joint comedy tour with his longtime friend and Only Murders in the Building co-star Steve Martin. The two have been performing together to enthusiastic audiences, trading stories and jokes in a format that feels less like a conventional stand-up show and more like a conversation between two old friends who happen to be very funny. Their next performance is scheduled for this Friday in Milwaukee at the Miller High Life Theater. Whether that show proceeds will depend entirely on how Martin Short and those closest to him choose to navigate the days ahead. It would be difficult to imagine him walking on stage under these circumstances, though no formal announcement regarding any schedule changes had been made at the time of this report. What makes this moment even more layered is the additional loss that the Short family's circle had already been absorbing just weeks before Katherine's death. Less than a month ago, actress Catherine O'Hara passed away from a pulmonary embolism while also privately battling rectal cancer. O'Hara was not only a beloved figure in Canadian and American comedy, but also a close personal friend and longtime collaborator of Martin Short's. The two had known each other since O'Hara was 18 years old, and their bond stretched across decades of shared work and friendship. During a recent stop on the comedy tour, Martin Short paid tribute to her, saying she had been the greatest, most brilliant, kindest, sweetest angel across all the years they had known each other. O'Hara is also nominated this Sunday at an upcoming awards ceremony for her role in the entertainment industry satire, The Studio. Martin Short himself is up for an acting award for his portrayal of Oliver Putnam in Only Murders in the Building, and the show is nominated in the ensemble category as well. The ceremony will now carry a weight it did not have just days ago. It is worth noting that Catherine Short died at 42, the same age at which many people are just beginning to feel the full weight of adult life. Careers built, relationships deepened, purposes clarified. She had done serious academic work, earned advanced degrees, built a practice, and committed herself to a cause she clearly believed in. She moved, in other words, between two very different worlds, one of visibility and celebration, and one of quiet, sustained service to others. By all outward measures, she had constructed a life of meaning. And yet, here we are. The family has asked for privacy, and that request deserves to be honored in full. If this story lands with any particular weight for those who have spent decades watching the cycles of public life, it may be because it touches something that no amount of fame or accomplishment seems to shield against. Loss arrives in every household. Grief compounds over years. Mental health struggles do not discriminate by profession, family background, or level of personal insight. Catherine Short knew more about the clinical dimensions of these issues than most people ever will, and she dedicated herself to fighting the stigma that keeps people silent. Her death does not undercut that work. If anything, it underscores the point her career was built on, that mental health deserves the same open, unstigmatized conversation that we give to any other aspect of human well-being. If you or someone you know is struggling, the NSCL, or 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, is available all day simply by dialing or texting 988. Catherine Short spent her professional life pointing people towards exactly that kind of help, and that part of her legacy is worth carrying forward.